Let's get the microphones where they need to be. Sorry, you have to manage me too.
I manage everyone. Somehow I manage.
Welcome back to the To Be Read podcast. I'm Julie.
And I'm Vanessa. And today we're talking about standalones, duologies, series as a whole, how they differ in their writing style, as well as our preferences.
All I can think of is serieses. Every time we talk about series in the plural, I'm just like, we're going to talk about serieses.
Hobbitses. Is it serai? Like, I mean, what is the plural
of series?
Or is it just series?
What is the plural of series?
Google will tell us.
The plural of series is still series.
It just doesn't sound right.
It doesn't.
It really should be serieses. Gollum was really onto something. Okay, so we're talking about standalones, series, trilogies, sagas, duologies, and what we prefer.
Yeah.
And why we prefer it and why authors do the things they do. Because I think the book world has changed significantly with the success that series have had.
Correct.
Especially with them like turning into movies, TV shows, all of that. I think it's changed the way the authors write.
I think it also depends on the genre. I feel like in a contemporary space, standalones do better. But there's a little workaround that happens with interconnected standalones. They live in the same world, but they're still just standalones. You can ingest them as one book at a time. But from a marketing strategy, it makes sense to maybe connect them because people, I don't know, it just makes sense to build upon momentum you already have.
Yes. I need to take this moment and allow space for a change in opinion and thought, okay? So everybody just expand your minds for a second and allow space because I'm going to redact something that I said in a previous episode. When we talked about tropes that we loved, I talked about how I loved an interconnected small town and every character gets a book. Mm-hmm. And then we started planning for this episode and I was just like, oh my gosh, there are so many interconnected little small towns where everybody gets a book. And maybe I don't like them as much as I thought I did when we did the tropes episode. So I would like to redact my statement and say I was wrong. Some of them are good, but not all of them are. Mm-hmm. And there it is.
And there it is. I respect you for redacting a previous thought. Sometimes people die on hills, and I'm like, really?
Yeah, I'm not willing to die on the hill of a small town interconnected.
Yeah. I mean, you can even compare a lot of these things to like Marvel, right? Like they're all their own stories, but they're interconnected and eventually they do get together and it works in that space. But in a book space, I feel like it's a cheap shot sometimes.
I don't disagree. And I think comparing it to Marvel is a really good comparison because the way that Marvel has done things has changed even the movie world. Mm-hmm. And so why, of course the book world would be changed as well.
But on a little side note of that, people are really not wanting to go see Marvel movies anymore. They're too overdone. So at some point, the industry changes. And this is probably, not just Marvel. This happens like for a long time.
Star Wars.
Yeah, Star Wars. Or for a long time, YA movies were a thing, right? Your Divergent, your Hunger Games. Yeah. And so we kind of go through these trends and these phases. And I think we will get to a point in the book world where interconnected standalone series are going to become less popular. Not ever go away, but they're just not going to be to the forefront as what they are now. We'll probably go in waves and there will be a popular book that is a standalone or an interconnected series or whatever. But I don't know. The book market is different, but it's kind of built on the same principles, right? Where the formula that did so well, why would you not apply it?
Yes.
To these other things.
Yes, and I think that it is something that works in the author's favor. I think it's I feel like cash grab is such a negative term.
It can be though.
But it kind of can be a cash grab. I mean, you think about as an author, the work that you put into creating a world and a universe and characters, and then taking that world you created and saying, well, I've got these characters, why can't I give all of them an individual story? Mm-hmm. I think it makes their job easier. But brings in more money too.
Yeah, and what's crazy to me is they don't all work. Like if they all worked well, maybe we'd like it more. But for instance, there's Stacey Marie Brown has the Savage Land series, and there's like 4 different interconnected series where there's 5 books, 3 books, whatever. There's a few in each series, but lately she's been doing like a few standalones, and they just don't work as well. Like on side characters, that these are the side characters everyone loved, and she's like, oh, I want to give them their own story. So why don't they work as well?
So you're referring to a standalone that's characters that are a part of a series but can be read as a standalone?
Yeah.
Like they don't have to be read?
No, I guess this is more of just like the interconnected
You're
part.
talking about the interconnected part.
Yeah.
So she's taking each individual character and giving them their own side story, a la Powerful with Powerless. Okay.
Oh, that's a perfect example of something that didn't work.
It did not work. I didn't read it, but I know from your opinion that it did not work.
I mean, in my opinion, is not like...
No, but even like thinking about that book, I was just like, I don't care about this character that much. Like,
I think if it were any bigger, I wouldn't have read it, but it was just kind of like a little... I was already going to reread Powerful, and I was like, well, might as well just throw in this other one for a tandem read because it wasn't big. It's like a novella. So, and then, there's standalones, we've got interconnected series, we've got trilogies and sagas. Your number one best friend, the point fives, the novellas.
A Court of Frost and Starlight is a primary example of that.
It's not really a standalone, but it is kind of separate from the
No, but let's
series.
talk about what ACOTAR is. ACOTAR is a trilogy with a bridge 0.5 into a new sector of a saga, basically. Do we follow that? Because you've got ACOTAR, ACOMAF, and ACOWAR that are Feyre and Rhysand's story. Then you've got the little bridge of Frost and Starlight that carries you over into Nesta's story. Now, we don't know exactly what's coming next with 6, but we know there's more books now. But it's not Feyre and Rhysand anymore. So that's a trilogy inside a series or a saga.
Yeah.
I don't know what's the difference.
The saga is kind of a weird name.
Saga.
You're right. It is a trilogy. And there's a lot of books written like that, where it was planned to be one thing and ended up being something else because it was successful.
And this is something that bothers me, is why don't we just stick to the plan? Because I feel like once you're out of the plan, and I know it's about money, and I get that, but it's like, I feel like sometimes we lose the integrity of the product.
Oh, absolutely.
When we just are worried about the money. Because I feel like that's what's happening with SJM's work.
Yeah.
I feel like we're losing the integrity of what.
Nothing has been the same since arguably Silver Flames. And I will say Silver Flames was a good book. I didn't obviously.
But Silver Flames was not a part of the plan.
Right.
You cannot look me in the eye and tell me that SJM planned for Elaine and Nesta to play a greater part.
Yeah,
in ACOTAR. I do not know.
She wouldn't have framed Nesta the way she did in the first book.
And I love Nesta, but I will die on that hill that they were never supposed to be a greater part of that series.
Yeah. And what's happening is you're right, it's losing the integrity of the series because now people are frustrated with SJM because CC2, which I don't know if that was before or after Silver Flames. I think it was after. CC2 and CC3 were both mediocre at best. Comparative to her other work, I should say. They're still good books.
No, I mean, as someone who read... So my reading order for SJM was ACOTAR, Crescent City, Throne of Glass. And as somebody who read Throne of Glass last, I can say that her work has gotten worse since.
Yeah. So that's not just her. You see that kind of all around Jennifer Armentrout. I loved those first 2 books. And this is a common thing you hear about the From Blood and Ash series. Everyone loved the first 2 or 3 books, and then it just goes downhill. Zodiac Academy, I mean, you know my thoughts on that. There's just a lot of things that you can do to keep the integrity of your product. Mary Pearson has the Remnant Chronicles series, which is the only series I think that I remember by the series name, not the title of the first book. And that's a trilogy. And then you have Dance of Thieves and Vow of Thieves. And those 2, so there's like a series of 3, and then those are a duology. Leigh Bardugo does this. That is a good way to do it, if you ask me, because you still get to explore the world, but you have wrapped up a storyline. You didn't leave any loose ends around, and it doesn't feel as much as a cash grab.
Yeah, I was going to say that one way the authors work around the issue of having a dud or prolonging a series going too long is by writing a duology. Mm-hmm. And I think a duology is a great way to go, but I think it's often poorly executed.
It can be.
There's careful planning that has to go into a duology.
You know my thoughts on duology.
I do, but I think you should share them with everybody.
What?
Speaking to that microphone, girl.
I don't love duologies, and it's because the pacing has never been correct for me. One Dark Window was kind of close, but what I didn't like about One Dark Window, spoiler alert, no, this is in the synopsis, so this isn't even a spoiler alert. The first book follows Raven and Elspeth. While they are still key players in the second book, it introduces Elm and Ione, yeah, as more of the main characters. Finish Raven and Elspeth, and then go into Elm and Ione. And I actually think that would have been better as a trilogy for that reason. Or introducing Elm and Ione's POVs in the first book. Like, I think it could have been executed better because no one felt like they got closure with Raven and Elspeth.
No one. Are you speaking for everybody?
No one in my soul. But I have seen that as a common theme, like on Goodreads.
I mean, we all want more Raven and Elspeth. Let's be real. Raven. I read One Dark Window shortly after I finished ACOTAR.
Okay.
And everybody, you jump into fantasy and everybody's just like, Rhysand is everything. Yeah. And I'm just like, yeah, but Raven. And
Raven is a more attainable.
This is a shock because I didn't put Raven in my top 10,
but you put Elm.
I put Elm though.
Yeah.
So I liked the Shepherd King duology more than you did. Mm-hmm. I really liked Elm and Ione's story, but I also see where you're coming from because it would have been nice to have more Raven and Elspeth because things kind of were tied together quickly. Mm-hmm. This is true.
I really do like Elm and Ione as well, by the way. I just felt that would have been better as a trilogy. Yes. And I actually still, like, one of my top series. I did love it. Probably like number 5 or 6.
It is so good.
If you haven't read it, go read it. And especially during spooky times.
Yes. But if you're going to look at duologies as a whole, I think it's a good example of like a duology that does it pretty well. There's no perfect duology out there.
No, there isn't. But not that I've read.
But that one does it pretty darn well.
Okay, so what's a couple of other duologies?
You know what one did not do it well?
What?
In my opinion.
I love this one. Tell me.
Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows.
Ooh.
Here's my hot take because I know that people love this duology. Like, love it with their entire soul. Mm-hmm. I've seen so many videos on TikTok of people just like sobbing at the end of this duology. And I was just like, you know what should have happened? They should have taken 150 pages from Ruthless Vows and just tacked it on to Divine Rivals, and it should have been a standalone.
Amen. I also agree.
That Ruthless Vows was painful.
I think what sucked about Ruthless Vows is there was high expectations.
I know
I've talked about like resellability of some of like the special copies of books, right? So I had the Fairy Loot edition of Ruthless Vows. No, of Divine Rivals. It came out just in their monthly subscription. It caught clout. It became really popular. I ended up selling it for close to $300. So I got it for $38 and then I resold it for that much. So the momentum that it had going into Ruthless Vows was almost not good because it didn't live up to it.
At least for me. I've heard people that like that's a 10 out of 10 reread all the time, sobbing at the end.
That's wild.
Broken
to me.
Forever. I gotta come clean. I skimmed to finish that one.
The last half of it, I was like,
So, spoiler alert for a second. If you haven't read Ruthless Vows, skip ahead. That death at the end, I didn't feel a thing. Her brother?
Oh, yeah. I was like, who died? Like, that's how much it didn't leave an imprint on me. I think I was sad, but I was just like, it is what it is.
It was just, I was just like, are we done yet?
I know. And, everyone just loved Divine Rivals.
Seriously, put 150 pages onto Divine Rivals, resolve it all, and you're good.
It wasn't a huge book anyway.
It didn't make a lot of sense.
No.
There wasn't a lot of clarity as to like who the bad guy was and where he came from and what the...
I feel like sometimes there's two different types of world building. There's the world building around you, and then there's the world building extended around you, like the gods, the belief system, like whatever, especially in a fantasy realm, right? There's more to it than just like your physical surroundings. So like your physical surroundings, whatever that your like main space is, and then there's like the world around it. And the world around it was off, but what you got in that world that she was in was amazing. It was very descriptive. It was very... I mean, everyone could imagine exactly what that book looked like, as far as like a 40s vibe, and I don't know if it was just great cover art. I don't know, but
and I mean, I really liked, what is it, Roman and Iris. Mm-hmm. I liked their story. They're cute.
Yeah.
But Ruthless Vows was just a no for me, dog.
Yeah, I agree. One that worked really well, I thought, was
better than One Dark Window.
Yeah. Yep. Is Bridge Kingdom.
Okay.
This one caught clout a couple years ago. So it's been on the TikTok circuit and is now off of it. At least as far as like popularity. It's still there. It's amazing. I love it. It gives me Aelin Astrover vibes. The FMC is...
those are big words.
Yeah. No, I think you'd actually really like it. And it's a duology. So, but there's great character development to great world building, you know, that balance there. I would actually say that's probably the best duology I've ever read. But what she did with it is there's a few different characters and she made their own duology for the different characters. So that's what she's in the process of doing now. I read book 1 in the... I can't even remember the name of it, and I didn't like it. It was about the brother, and now she's doing it about a sister, and like, so I haven't really caught on to those, but that, as far as like one duology, that one was really good. Crowns of Nyaxia, just don't have a long period of time in between, and maybe I really liked it in the moment, but I didn't like it as much on a reread.
I just don't know if that second book, even if I had read it close together, I still don't know if I would have liked it as much.
It's very political.
It is very political. There's a lot of moving pieces. And it still didn't feel like it resolved that well at the end.
I would like to throw this out for all authors. This is my PSA to all authors. You will have much happier readers if you invest in good artwork for your map.
Oh, 1,000%.
That was not a great map. Like, I remember flipping back and being like, what? Where are we? And like, it just was not great.
Yeah, no.
And the way it spans across the page.
I'm stoked for Carissa Broadbent because that duology is really picking up steam. It's getting like, it's in Barnes & Noble. It's all over. And I love that for her. It was just, I really liked the first one, minus the betrayal I felt at the end. Oh, that one hit hard.
It shocks me you didn't see that coming.
But the second one, it was just like, I'm lost.
Yeah.
Normally, what I really like about duologies is just that, like, from a mood reader perspective, it doesn't feel like a huge commitment and it doesn't feel like I'm going to lose interest.
But why not a standalone at that point?
Well, I'm just saying that if I'm going to have a more prolonged story, give me a duology. Like, I can invest a little more time without having to invest
a lot of
time. No, standalones always for the win, right?
One thing I'm excited to read Heartless Hunter.
Yes.
And
whatever the next one is.
But I'm waiting until February.
That's on my October TBR because of book club.
You'll have to let me know how that goes. I know people love it. I've heard great things. One more little shout out to a great duology was Six of Crows. But that is a duology that I don't really know the publishing order, but I'm pretty sure it's after Shadow and Bone, which was a trilogy, right? But it focuses in the same world, but as
different
characters. And it was so completely different than the first three that it worked really well for me. I know you've tried on that one and not been able to get through it.
I'm really sad to say that I do not think Leigh Bardugo and I mesh.
Not simpatico.
I haven't liked a single book of hers.
Oh, I really like her.
But she's great for other people and other people really like her.
Just
It just does not jive.
With her writing, you have to be very, very cognizant of what's happening. So it's
cognizant.
I know. It's not like a skimmable book that you would enjoy.
There is a lot of, I don't know. There's just something about her writing style that I'm just like,
that's okay. It's not for everyone.
It's not for everyone.
So trilogies are where I like. This is where I love to live in, if possible.
Trilogies are a good place, but they're a dangerous place.
Oh, how so?
That second book slump.
Oh, yeah.
That second book slump can hit hard.
I think there's like almost like two types of trilogies. There's one where the second one is just terrible. And then, it goes back up like good, terrible, good. And then there's some where it's like good, better, not so good.
Yes.
So ACOTAR
is definitely one of those like good,
the
better.
One, I know this isn't a trilogy, but as of right now, it's a trilogy, The Spark of the Everflame. And I loved all 3 books, but the second one was the highlight.
Okay. I have not read the third one yet, so.
Yeah. I think one thing that writers should always be cognizant of is the progress over not only the book, but the series. Sometimes it feels like they have a good arc in the book, but as a series, it lacks. In order to avoid that slump, the secondary slump, I think that authors just have to be really cognizant that instead of trying to get that second book out because the first book did so well or something, they really need to. The second one makes or breaks you, if you ask me, as a writer. So a good example of this is Pierce Brown's Red Rising trilogy. The second one is my favorite. I think some people like the third one as well, like just as much, but it's so much better, and it's the next level. And ACOTAR was the same way. The second one was the next level, but just keeping the momentum and having that arc in the right space of a third one is hard and tricky. Are there like trilogies that you liked?
One that I think did it really well, but also suffered a little bit, just like a minuscule amount in the second book, was the Mistborn trilogy, the first Mistborn trilogy, part of the greater Mistborn saga. It's the Well of Ascension. Brandon Sanderson is dense, but that trilogy blew my socks off.
Really?
Once I was able to like buckle down and get through it.
Okay.
They're not bingeable reads. That's something that I struggle with because I seek the dopamine.
Dopamine.
So I actually read the first 2 back to back, and then I started the third one, and then I had to put it down for a little bit, but then I picked it back up, and once I finished it, I was like, oh my gosh. So that's a top tier like trilogy for me. Yeah. I think something that I think something that authors try to do in their second book is they get so excited that they overpack it. I think this is something that we saw in Iron Flame. I think there was too much that was like shoved into there. You're just like, what? I think it read better a second time through once you kind of had a grasp of things. But the first time through, I was like, why are we learning about runes? Mm-hmm. What's happening?
But they could have introduced that. She could have introduced that way earlier in the book.
Yes.
So that's what I'm cognizant of a lot of times. And maybe it's because I'm pretty much an exclusive fantasy reader, is the book needs to have a good arc, and it needs to have, like, if all of a sudden just in the second half you're adding these important things.
Yes.
You're doing it wrong.
Yeah. A couple other trilogies that I think of are Hunger Games, which for me the third book was a slump, but the second book was
okay.
That was a good one.
I have not read those in my adult life. Like I read them maybe like when they first came out when I was like 20.
Divergent is one where I believe the first book is the best one,
Isn't there
and it
4
goes
books?
down from there. I believe there's a book from 4's point of view, but there's only 3.
Oh.
And technically there's 4 with Hunger Games because of A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, but that's like a prequel.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings.
Oh yeah. See, that's such a classic. I have a hard time dogging it, you know? Like,
yeah.
Were there issues? Yeah, but like not enough for me to care. I still love that.
Crescent City is also another example of the first book's the best one, and it goes downhill from there. Mm-hmm. So it's just kind of interesting to see what happens with trilogies.
Mm-hmm. I think a perfect trilogy or a trilogy done right is where stories, especially in the fantasy realm, shine. Now, you can't take that into a contemporary space. Sometimes it depends on the genre. I feel like standalones shine more in the contemporary space, and fantasies are do better as series.
I think that's because of the world building. In a contemporary space, there's no world building. You don't have to explain.
Good point.
But when you're building worlds, there's so much that has to go into it.
Because it's not.
If I had to pick a perfect trilogy, I would say Mistborn is probably the closest that I've read to a perfect trilogy.
I read Mistborn 1 and I haven't read 2 or 3. Not that I didn't like it, but it was dense. Like I didn't want to go into the second one.
We're talking about dense and we jump into series, then we get into Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight archive, where right now he has 4 books that are all over 1,000 pages. I've read The Way of Kings. I'm over halfway through Words of Radiance right now. They're dense. They're incredible. That man weaves the story like I want to look inside his brain, but that right there is the perfect example of why you have to have a series in a fantasy world, because his worlds are so complex yet so understandable. It's incredible.
I can't believe he pushes out as much work as he does, and it's still all very top tier.
And it's always good.
Yeah.
Consistent across the board.
He's like, here, I just whipped this up over my vacation. Go fund it.
Give me money.
Buddy. So, but he's earned it. Like, he's earned the reputation he has.
Yes.
He has some standalones I'm excited to read. They're on my TBR. Is Trust of the Emerald Sea.
Trust of the Emerald Sea is spectacular.
And what is it? The Future Wizard Guidebook or something like that.
Yeah.
I apologize. I don't actually know this.
So he's got Trust in the Emerald Sea, and that's one if you want to dip your toes into Sanderson, do that one. He's has quite a few standalones. Elantris, Warbreaker. Warbreaker was actually the first Sanderson book I read, which was good. Tress, he's got Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. He's got the Wizard Handbook to Saving Medieval England. The Sunlit Man, which I think the Sunlit Man connects to the Cosmere. All of his books, not all of his books, but a lot of his books are interconnected. Mm-hmm. He has a few other series. He has some YA series. He has like a middle grade fiction series. The man is incredible.
I mean, yeah, he just is. I feel like a lot of people already know like what to expect with him. You know, it is dense, but is it a great ride? Absolutely. If you need a suggestion for some standalones that are in an interconnected series that are romantic-y, I suggest Elise Kova's Married to Magic series. They're all interconnected and they're all like kind of different parts of this kingdom, but they all read as standalones. You don't have to read the others to know. You don't have to.
Yeah.
But it's just a nice little call out when you do recognize things.
I do appreciate that. It is fun to have an interconnected series. Like I said in the Tropes episode, I do like that. Mm-hmm. It's not my favorite thing. I don't always want to read an interconnected series. I like to go in and pick because they're normally advertised by Trope.
Yeah.
I like to go in and be like, I want to read the Brother's Best Friend trope. That's what I want. And then I don't read the other ones. So I appreciate a standalone interconnected series most of the time.
Okay. So do you prefer interconnected standalones or standalones to like a series or a trilogy?
It's hard because a good series is the ride of a lifetime, right? Yeah. I mean, you're going to be taken on a journey that you'll never be on ever again. Mm-hmm. It's unmatched. But as a mood reader, sometimes it's hard to be in that space for so long.
Yeah.
I have not read a lot of complete series in my life. I was thinking back on it. I've read Harry Potter 3 times, twice in my adult life, completely. The other series that I have completed in my recent memory are the SJM books.
Those are bingeable.
Which are ones that I read like consecutively.
Right.
Other series I've read kind of broken up, but those are the ones that I've read. I can do duologies easier, but I'm just entering fantasy still. I still feel like I'm just getting my feet wet.
It's been over a year.
But
you're not just entering. You've got your passport, lady.
Choo-choo. No, I need to stop saying that I'm just dipping my toes in because I'm not. I'm reading Sanderson. Let's get real.
Yeah. I think that a lot of younger series that are they were shorter, but they were still series. That's where a lot of people read the whole entire series. You've got your Chronicles of Narnia. You've got your Percy Jackson, you've got your Harry Potter, you've got a lot of these, but maybe not Harry Potter, but like a lot of those ones, they were just shorter. So pacing wise, it works better in a shorter span. And that's one thing that bothers the crap out of me is if you have like 7 books in your series, make them like 500 words, 500 to 5 to 7 maybe.
Pages, you mean?
Oh, excuse me, pages. Yeah, make them 500 pages, but even 5 to 700 pages maybe. Like, don't make them over 1,000. Sorry, I'm sorry, Brandon Sanderson. Like, I guess when a story will tell you what it needs to say, but that's when I struggle is when the book itself is really long in the series. Like, the series itself is long, but the book should not be over 1,000 pages if it's in a series that is over 7 books. My personal opinion.
Stormlight Archive slated for 10. Book 5 comes out in December.
Yeah.
I will not be ready by then. There's no way.
Oh, so many people are trying, though. I know so many people are trying to reread those or, catch up or whatever. Mazel tov.
I've heard they're fantastic listens. So if you're an audiobook person.
Fourth Wing is a series that is a little odd to me because she came out right from the beginning and said, this is a 5-book series.
And her publisher gave her a 5-book deal.
Yes. This was her plan. She had it mapped out. And in a lot of ways, I can really respect that. But I think that also invites some bad habits. We've already talked about that in our Fourth Wing episode of she had these places to hit, but
she missed them.
But getting there is not... I kind of think about it like when you do a sculpture. You have to have like the bones. You have to have the rebar in the middle, like the support system. And she has those in place. But what she lacked was the clay that moved around it, that connected the pieces, that makes it truly art.
Not me learning that there's rebar in sculptures.
or just a support system. Like, it's not always rebar, but I mean, it's not just like...
Didn't even think about that. Didn't even cross my mind.
Oh. Okay. Maybe I'm wrong.
I'm sure there's support. Like, you think about how big the...
like these busts, they just fall right over if there was an anchor.
Oh my gosh, there's got to be an anchor in there.
Yeah. So, that's maybe a good way to phrase it. There's an anchor. She's got her anchor, but what fills around the anchor is not there. And while I love Fourth Wing
for what it is,
it is what it is. So, another series that I loved was Air Awakens. The books are not huge. I think it's 5 books, and this is by Elise Kova. It really hits well because it's not incredibly long either.
Well, I think that's something that SJM did well with Throne of Glass was those first 6 books. 5 books were not huge. The density really took off at Empire of Storms. Mm-hmm. And I think it was risky. I think it paid off well. I know that it didn't pay off well for everybody. I think Kingdom of Ash is really dense for some people. And that's fine, but...
Again, a lot of it is pacing. They're going places. They're doing things, but there's also character development. So,
yeah, there has to be that balance of character development versus going places. Because if you're just taking me place to place and I don't know anything about your characters, I'm gone.
You have to have a reason to stay.
Yeah.
Character development is your reason to stay on the journey that they give you.
Look at you. That was very good.
I know.
That was very good.
That was off the top of my head.
You nailed it.
I think that I struggle with contemporary because there is no plot other than relationships.
You take that back. Just kidding. You're right. There really isn't much going on besides their relationships. It's hard for me to think of a contemporary that's not like a lit fic. Because I think contemporary lit fic are different.
Oh, yeah, I'd agree. I'd agree with that. I think a genre you and I both don't get into, but is kind of a weird little niche is either dark romance or like mafia. I know someone who's like super into mafia romance.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if I ever did get into quote unquote dark romance, that's the way I would go, because at least there's like still a plot. Like there's still there's
something else happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. I think that so often contemporary authors are trying to put something in there and it doesn't hit. Abby Jimenez is, okay, this is weird. And I learned this after I read it. She's got 3 books, Part of Your World, Yours Truly, and Just for the Summer, that are technically part of a series. Did not know that. I have not read Part of Your World, but I've read Yours Truly and Just for the Summer. And I've heard plenty of people on TikTok and podcasts say, you need to read them in order. It enhances the story. Made that mistake. So that's one thing on that little whatever series. But the next thing is the conflict and the plot in Just for the Summer was so contrived, and it was, I understand where Jimenez was trying to go. I think addressing family trauma and like motherhood trauma and dealing with your mom, like that's an important thing. But it just came about in the most like obscure and random way, and then was resolved in such a strange manner that I was just like, there's no way. Like, you take these 2 characters that both have the most messed up moms, and then they get together and everything's good. And then the one is like, I can't do this. I have to go to intensive therapy for 6 months. And then she shows up at the end and everything's hunky-dory. I was like, nah.
There seems to be surface level. Yeah.
Nah.
Don't buy it.
Don't buy it.
Don't buy it.
I wanted to mention in Standalones, because we talked a little bit about Brandon Sanderson's Standalones. Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir is a spectacular,
my husband loves that book,
sci-fi standalone that I just like. I love that book so much. And a standalone that I'm really wanting to read, I just have to be in the right brain space for it, is The Sword of Kagan.
I hear that one is amazing. That is also on my TBR
everywhere. List. I want to read it.
I hear that one will devastate you.
Yeah. Sounds like my cup of tea.
Sounds like a good Christmas read, really, is what I'm hearing.
Christmas read. Merry Christmas. Here's depression.
Let's add on top of your seasonal depression with book depression. With book depression. So if you had a preference, well, no, we've established that your mood reading, you need it all.
Give me it all. But what were you going to say if I had to pick?
Yeah.
Ooh. Honestly, I'd probably pick a duology because I want a little bit more. I want a little more world. I want a little more magic. Mm-hmm. But I don't want the commitment.
You want your cake and eat it too?
Yeah.
If I had to pick, it would be a trilogy.
A trilogy.
Yeah. Maybe for the same reason, but I'm used to reading series that are over 5 books.
Yeah.
Deep. So a trilogy is my version of a duology.
Okay. I think that's fair. It gives a little bit more.
Yeah.
A little bit more oomph.
Yeah. But I do agree that sometimes they fall flat. But
100%.
honestly, so do duologies and so do standalones. So do.
I think it's a risky business. Honestly. Like.
Risque.
I understand that you basically get like free advertising as you put out that first book, and they just kind of build off each other. Like,
yeah,
righteous. That's awesome. It's risky though.
Mm-hmm. I think what we said at the very beginning is still really applicable. It can alter the integrity. So if that integrity of the story that you want to tell is 1 book, 2 books, 3 books, whatever you do it well.
And plan it out and stick to that plan, and don't let money dictate it. I know that money's spectacular. We all want more money, right? But I don't think you should let money dictate what you create as an artist.
Yeah, and I think it's easy for people who get picked up by publishers and see big numbers for that to intimidate.
Yeah. Patrick Rothfuss is the author of a series called The Name of the Wind.
Okay.
It's slated to be a trilogy. Mm-hmm. It's been 10 years since he's released a book.
Ooh.
He's got 1 and 2 done. My husband read them, and he's been like, I'm never going to get that 3rd book, and I'm just sitting here like, what's going to happen? And I think that might be an instance where you're like, do I have a trilogy planned out? I think I do. Let's sign for a trilogy.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I can really appreciate is SJM taking her time to make sure it's done right.
Oh, she's pissing people off right now, and I love it.
But I mean, it's because we're in a market that's like
give,
and sometimes it affects the story.
Well, we're in a market where people are cranking out whatever the crap comes out of their brains,
and there's some good things in there, and there's some not great things.
There's some not great things in there. There's some things that I'm just like, you should probably keep that to yourself.
I found so many great indie authors through social media. K.L. Spear is a fantastic example of this. Her books are so good and not like anything else I've ever read. But she's not picked up by a big name, and so she could take her time doing what she wanted with it, right? Mm-hmm. So there are people out there who can do it well, and then there's people out there like I'm gonna say it, Powerless, which it felt like a cash grab. And I know that one's picked up by like a publisher even, but it just goes to show like integrity of the work really is reflected. And if you like these little fluff pieces, or if you just like quantity over quality, that there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
However, there are people who do like more quality writing, and it's hard to sift through stories now.
It is.
Because what's popular isn't always quality writing.
Isn't that the hardest thing ever?
Yeah. And especially with like the influence market, like you just get like 3 book talkers, big name book talkers to talk about your book, and it can really take off, and it could not be great quality wise.
That's where we get those reviews about Book Talk lying to us.
The books that Book Talk said I'd like.
Yeah.
I always laugh at the people who like hate on Book Talk, because I'm like, I've actually found a lot of really good things from Book Talk. They're not all winners, but
no, but it's an easy, convenient way to spread the word about a book.
Mm-hmm. And how many books are out there? Like millions. So it's hard to sift through what could be a good story or not.
Yeah.
So if there's one thing that our listeners take away is, like if they resonate with one of us, because you and I have different tastes.
We're not the same.
Yeah, we're not the same. Even though we like a lot of the same books. Find someone that you align yourself with your tastes, and then take their recommendations, whether that's us or like a book talker or just like good old public library, like whatever works for you. But
I like to walk through a bookstore or the library and take pictures of books that I think look interesting, and then I look them up on Goodreads later and add them if I want.
Interesting.
Normally based off their rating.
That's hard because
I know you can miss some goodies like Guild.
Yeah, the Plated Prisoner series. I still don't know why that one. Like, I know people didn't expect some things, but
yeah. Sometimes I will eat up a series, and sometimes I will take it slow. And right now I'm taking the Plated Prisoner series slow.
That's a good one to take slow, because the first few books aren't necessarily political, but it's heavy material. Heavy material, for sure. One of my favorites. Oof.
So good. So we want to know, are you a series reader? Do you prefer standalones? Do you like to throw in a duology? Do you read it all at once, or do you split it up? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for joining us this week. Let us know what series you're loving recently. Remember, books are for everyone, books are for you, and we'll catch you next week. Bye. There you go. How was that?
Beautiful.